This is Keith Whalen from RPI with Justin Braun. Thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar on Ventures in Cloud, project management best practices based on our experience assisting customers migrate to the cloud. Presenting today, we have one of the partners at RPI and head of service delivery, Justin Braun. A brand new presentation. A couple of housekeeping notes before I hand it off. One is we will be recording this session. It takes us a week or so to get it edited and ready to upload onto YouTube, but you will be able to rewatch it and share it. Highly encourage and appreciate your time in checking this out. Also, we encourage questions. If you have any along the way, please type them into the GoToWebinar chat or questions modules, and Mr. Bill Getty will read them as opportunities allow. And with that, I give you Mr. Justin Braun.
Thanks, Keith. Thank you, everyone. Welcome, everybody. As a jumping off point, I want to talk about the goals at RPI. As the VP of our service delivery organization, we literally begin every customer, every project relationship with the primary goal of earning the trust and the opportunity to perform future work with your organization. If we're not able, for whatever reason, to provide future work, then we hope to obtain a positive reference to do, for other clients looking to do business with Infor or RPI. This is our ultimate metric of success. And we value project management, and we look for clients that also value project management because it supports that customer success and also the success of our company and the consultants that we engage. So I'm very passionate about project management best practices in general. And I'm here to share experiences that we've learned in our adventures in the cloud. Today's agenda, we're going to talk briefly about RPI. We're going to talk about what's going on in the cloud, set some expectations about what a cloud project might look like for your organization. And then we're going to dive into what we consider to be project management best practices specific to the cloud. So we're going to touch on resource alignment, roles and responsibilities. What is a RICE inventory? It's an acronym. How to approach testing and version control and planning for a platform migration if that's applicable to your environment. And we're going to touch on customizations as well. And we're going to close this presentation, time allotted, with the value of a formal project close, which is something that all RPI project managers complete on our projects. First, a little bit about RPI. We were founded in 1999. We're headquartered in Baltimore, Maryland. We have offices in Kansas City, Scottsdale, and Tampa. We employ over 70 consultants across the country, certified across all spectrums of the Infor Lawson products. We cover all core competencies, including several group photos in random locations. This is us at Inform this past July. We had an excellent conference, and for those that stopped by the booth, thank you. Our cloud experience to date includes 11 cloud projects. 4 of these clients are now live in the cloud, 7 are in progress. 9 of those projects were upgrades, so the vast majority of cloud activity in the market thus far includes upgrades. We are currently working on 2 net new Cloud Suite implementations. RPI was in the first batch of Infor certified cloud partners, so we're proud of our experience in the cloud. And we're here to share what we consider to be project management best practices. I also want to point out that 5 of those 11 cloud projects did include platform migrations, and that's one of the things that the project management discipline definitely needs to take into consideration, particularly if you're in a customized cloud environment. So first, let's just kind of start with an understanding for those that aren't aware of what the cloud looks like. The underlying technology of the Infor Cloud is Amazon Web Services, which has been standardized to Windows operating system and SQL database. So understand going in that is the underlying technology in the cloud. If you're an on-premise Lawson customer today or Infor customer today, and you use Oracle or Unix, these technologies will change, and that brings some additional factors. And also just market-wide, there's a trend with Infor, particularly with this investment in Amazon Web Services, the leading provider of cloud services towards the Windows SQL platform. What does a cloud project look like? Not all cloud projects are created the same. The first thing to point out, one of the main advantages of a cloud is very quick provisioning. And it is true that the cloud projects can get off to a faster start because they have a full set of products that can be quickly provisioned from a template. They're not individually installed. It goes quickly, so that phase of the project in an on-prem world, which requires server provisioning and specifications and installation, power, all those things that happen in IT are taken care of ahead of time, and you're just provisioning a system in the cloud. So that's one of the main benefits, and that's one of the things that's different. You may be able to start and end a cloud project faster than an on-premise project. In the cloud, single sign-on is supported. It is facilitated by ADFS, Active Directory Federation Services. So just like LDAP bind was all the rage 8 or 10 years ago, ADFS Trust is the new way to facilitate single sign-on in the cloud to allow your users to log in to Infor Lawson using the same ID that they use to log into their system in the morning. When you contract with Infor and their client account executives, there's a conversation about exactly what products you'd like to have in the cloud. You do have the option to license products a la carte, just like an on-premise. You also have the option to adopt industry-specific pre-bundling of products, and I've provided Healthcare Cloud Suite as an example here in this slide. Pre-packaged products, very cost competitive. What we've seen in cloud clients moving from on-prem into the cloud, taking the Cloud Suite option, is they're now they're turned on to new products that they didn't previously have. For example, in this Healthcare Cloud Suite bundle, you might see smart reconciliation or mobile applications, things that would be very useful and are part of the subscription to an industry-specific bundling of products. This is when you talk about cloud, there's also the concept of multi-tenant versus single-tenant. Most of this conversation is about a single-tenant scenario, so you're subscribing to an instance of Infor Lawson, and you're the single tenant of that subscription. When you talk about cloud, you also talk about multi-tenant, which is truly a single code source. So some of the other ASP applications that you might have, like a Concur or other fully web-deployed applications that are multi-tenant. Where Infor is in that overall trajectory, some of Infor's cloud applications are multi-tenant. The Lawson family of Infor products are still currently single tenant. And that's how it's licensed, and then just understanding the different types of cloud projects. As I shared with you in our experience, there are net new Cloud Suite implementations. We're currently working on 2 of those. You might have a client that has an on-premise instance of Infor or Lawson, and they're looking to extend to new products, and they put those products in the cloud. You can actually provision some of your Infor products in the cloud and integrate them on-premise. And then there's obviously the bulk of the work that we've seen so far is moving existing on-premise Infor Lawson clients into the cloud, whether that's in service of their 9 to 10 upgrade or simply moving 10 that they've already upgraded on-prem into the cloud. That's where a lot of the activity is, and that's primarily what most of these project management best practices are about. Net new implementations and the integrated change management that's required to make those projects successful. That has a project, those have best practices all of their own, and that's not the scope of this presentation. But if you're considering Infor Cloud for a net new system, or you're currently engaged in such a project, please stick around and hopefully you'll learn something. So again, what do we consider to be project management best practices in the cloud? And then this is intended to be specific to cloud projects. And I don't want to drag everybody through the PMBOK or the classic project management best practices. We want to try to make this concise and useful so that you know what to pay attention to as you embark upon this specific type of project. So out of the gates, we suggest and recommend and we consider a best practice to address the following topics as soon as possible. The first, as I mentioned, ADFS Trust. It's part of what's new in the cloud, and as a result, clients and Infor and everybody's kind of figuring out exactly how that is going to work. And SAML, it is standardized. It moves fairly quickly, but there's also a significant amount of information that your networking folks have to provide to get that process started. So we recommend you start that soon in the process. Obviously, communication is key to project management. So understanding exactly what the issue escalation path is, very important to get that out on the table soon, and understand that this project is potentially unique in that you're dealing with your own internal stakeholders, perhaps an implementation partner like RPI, and now Infor has a larger stake because they're responsible to keep the lights on for this new system. So it really is a menage a trois, if you will, of three different parties all working together towards the same end. So getting a good communication plan in place and establishing a regular meeting cadence with all stakeholders is critical. Customizations, generally speaking, in the cloud are discouraged. It's kind of entirely not the point of going to the cloud, especially if you think about the long-term goal of multi-tenant. But they are a reality, and there are processes and there are best practices just around customizations that we can use and we can guide you through. I actually presented it in forum to all partners on specifically on customizations and some of the lessons learned on that front. We're happy to talk more about that in depth if that's applicable. Start the customizations. Understand going in that customizations, if you have them, some may need to move to the cloud, some may not. That's ultimately driven by your user requirements. And just understand that there is an approval process. As I said, Infor is now contracted to keep this system up and running. You can't expect them to do that without informing them of what exactly they're hosting for you, including the customizations. And we're going to talk more about that a little bit later. But just know going in that there's an approval process and it should be complete prior to development. Testing plan, critical for any project, especially a cloud project. Understand what is your definition of success. If you don't have one, we strongly recommend you build a consolidated and centralized testing plan that you can also use as a tracking mechanism throughout the project. And while you may have gone through an 8 to 9 or a 9 to 901 upgrade and not put a lot of time into performance desktop or worried, performance tuning or the desktop configuration of your users, those are critical in this testing plan. So you really want to give some focus and shed some light on performance tuning and testing in your test plan. And then obviously aligning resources and roles, a fundamental best practice, but certainly applicable here. So this slide kind of elaborates on that more. I'm not going to explore each and every role. It's just kind of furthering that understanding that there's going to be an Infor team, your team, and potentially a consulting team. And the sooner you can align resources and get your aces in their places, so to speak, the better off everyone's going to be. A couple things I'd like to highlight. The service delivery manager role is someone that is responsible at Infor to facilitate your migration project. It's a critical role, and it is a challenging role. And what's important to understand about that role is they are not a project manager. They support many clients. Infor is growing that organization, as I understand, to further provide better customer service to cloud clients. And it's important to understand for your project managers or for a project like this, that role responds better to specific direction with what you need and when you need it, rather than assuming them to be proactive. And that's what we're seeing on the front lines, and it behooves your project management organization to be as proactive with that service delivery manager as possible. In addition to an SDM, you may or you may not have agreed with your client account exec at Infor to have a client success manager. That would be a role, kind of more of a relationship manager, providing continuity, facilitating follow-through on tickets or requests into Infor Extreme. So those are two key roles. The SDM is required to get you to the cloud. The CSM is a negotiation point during your sale. What's important from your team, normally we expect that our cloud clients have a project manager dedicated to the project, not necessarily in a full FTE capacity. Those types of things depend. But having some project management to oversee and establish your sustainability is an important role to consider. And it's very unlikely that your project manager has specific expertise in this cloud space or the experience that we bring to bear. So we obviously recommend engaging an RPI PM as well and understanding where those handoffs are. It's very important. Also, you're going to the cloud, so there's a normal expectation that you're going to see a reduction in your IT requirements to support Lawson, and that is in fact true, but it doesn't make everybody go away. There's still the need for the internal system administration duties, the functional leads or the architect role as we call it, They're super users, folks that your functional leads can delegate to accomplish tasks like testing or data validation or even requirements definition. These things do not go away in the cloud. They're very important. It's important that you have someone that understands how user provisioning works and security is administered. You're going to need to look at your desktop and make sure you have, 64-bit, Windows 7 operating system or above. Lots of things that still remain in your sphere of influence and responsibility, including primarily, definition, execution of your test plan. and the common RPI team for a project like this, would include an account executive, engagement manager, project manager, functional leads, much more important in the net new space, but still a part of a cloud migration to facilitate testing as required, and potentially a BI consultant strategist if that's within your scope. So that's kind of a high level. The best practice to highlight is, align those resources and get clear on roles and responsibilities. And again, testing is critical. If I'm an Infor Lawson customer and I'm implementing in the cloud, I'm going to own the testing. And we look for customers that have that attitude. We also bring a lot of assets to bear if you need help in that respect. If you need us to create a test plan for you, that's something that we've done time and again. If you need our resources to execute some of that test plan, we can do that. At the end of the day, it's a system that you need to be in a position to sustain yourself on when we're gone until we're able to come back for the next gig. So we definitely recommend and look for clients and customers that are interested in participating and owning that testing with our advisory on certain things that are unique, like how do we properly do performance testing and things like that. So it's definitely a shared load all around, but the ultimate ownership is what it is. So getting back to the best practices around project management, plan for your set updates. Consider the timing of set updates and bake it into your project plan. So it's important to understand that set updates are pre-bundled, packaged patches that update your system. And in an on-premise world, you are able to pick and choose environment or application patches to apply to resolve certain issues or just to overall keep your system up to date. And some of those updates are not available a la carte in the cloud. They can only be obtained by accepting a Set 1 update. They come about every 6 months or so. The first one was released in February, so Set 2 is due sometime this fall. And if you're looking at your timeline and you're planning a project like this and you expect this second set update to hit along your critical path, it's beneficial to try and time that to occur before your user acceptance testing, because what we've seen and what you don't want, frankly, is to uncover software issues in UAT that need to be resolved with a set update, because the set update is so comprehensive that it often requires a full rerun of your test cycle. So you might end up bargaining for an additional test cycle that was not planned. And you can eliminate that during planning by baking those Set 1 updates or set updates into your overall project timeline. Another thing that I mentioned, start early on the RICE inventory. Reports, interfaces, customizations, and extensions, very important. Consider version control. Those are the types of things that may evolve over time. So some of your users might remember things that they didn't capture right up front. So you want to make it easy to edit and have version control around that. Excuse me. You want to include those RICE components in your test plan. So, we assume you have a test plan. If you need one, we're happy to help you. This is an example of one that we created for a client that has, kind of the tracking mechanisms up front, and then each of the individual tabs, if you can see, includes application use cases and the RICE components across the bottom. Very helpful to include that in your test plan. Yes, Bill?
Justin, we have a question from the field, and the question is, are the upgrades into the cloud mostly to Infor 10 or to Infor 11? What's the options there?
Everything we've worked on has been 10.
Thank you.
Okay. So, bake the test plan into your planning. It's important. Make sure you understand if you're looking at a test cycle of, first pass, second pass, maybe a third pass test before you go live. Make sure you're setting expectations of what the objectives are for each of those, and then obviously documenting the specifics of exactly what needs to occur. Another recommendation to properly manage a project that may be customization heavy is to conduct a fit gap analysis. As I said, the long-term goal in the cloud is no customization. It's configurations instead of customizations, and there are ways to look at what you have today and potentially remediate the need for those customizations with additional feature functionality in the new version. Or you can take a custom script or COBOL program and replace it with an extensibility tool. So there's a lot of things that you should look at if you have an existing list of customizations and you're going to the cloud. We recommend looking at those individually to understand truly which ones do need to move to the cloud versus which provide other options, whether it's a slight change to a business process or a different way of accommodating that customization than you previously were using on the older technology. So we recommend that as a deliverable during planning, and it really helps gain understanding of those customizations in context early on in the process. The other point I want to mention is platform migration. Again, if you're moving from a Unix or an Oracle world to a Windows SQL world, some things may change, particularly if you're customized. You might have shell scripts that you can remediate with IPA flows. You might have stored procedures in Oracle that need to find their way into SQL. The IDs change slightly, so basically the point is if you're looking at a platform migration, that's fine. I mean, we've been successful many times over. It does typically result in a recommended third pass because there are pretty significant database changes, as well as other things to consider in the realm of customization. So if you're looking at a project like this and you're changing your platforms, that's an increased requirement on your project management function. Talking further a little bit about customizations. The cloud objective is, it's almost semantic, but it's significant, it's real. It's the value prop of cloud, if you will, is, get rid of these costly customizations that have a hidden cost of ownership and resolve them with system configurations which update themselves as the solution evolves. So it's a little semantics, but the first thing you need to do to understand your planning for customizations is understand what a customization is. So things like IPA flows, Design Studio form modifications, database objects, configuration console changes for the landmark technologies, Smart Office, your application security, any custom reporting that you're doing through LBI or IBI. These are not custom. These might be talked about in the context of a custom report or a custom form, but if you're using these extensibility tools, these are not, by the letter of the policy around customizations. These are configurations. These are supported. These are okay, and not really part of the approval conversation relative to customizations. The customizations that do require approval break out into two tiers. So the first tier is kind of the less invasive customizations. So you might have cloned a Lawson COBOL program, and AP 175 is now ZZ 175, and you've customized that program. It's cloned of the core application code. That's not particularly invasive to the product. It is something that needs to be approved. It is important to look at why that exists in the first place and maybe address that with other tools so that you can get rid of the customization altogether. And that would be a less invasive customization that's discouraged, but it's a reality. So there's an opportunity to get approval. Similarly, custom tables, as long as they're created through the Lawson DBDef utilities, those are technically customizations. They're less invasive. And then any scripting that exists is kind of tends to fall in that first tier category. The second tier are the more invasive customizations, and they exist for a lot of reasons. If you're dealing with modified standard programs or database definitions, things that Infor normally delivers out of the box that you've gone in and modified and you want to modify in the cloud, as you can imagine, that's highly discouraged. And the same is true for any code requiring elevated permissions on the cloud server, so third-party applications that are talking to and from the Lawson database, or even customizations to your front end of Employee Manager Self-Service or RQC. These are highly discouraged. They're called Tier 2, and they require an additional level of approval in the cloud. So those are pretty much the main points that we've learned along the way in our adventures in cloud. I did mention the importance of project close. That's especially in an evolving market. It's a wonderful opportunity to share your experiences, good and bad, with our team so that we can convey that communication to our other partner, Infor, and make sure they're doing everything that they can. We, as an Infor Alliance partner that's cloud certified, we participate in a regular cadence with our counterparts at Infor to share with them what we're seeing on the front lines and help them improve the offering and improve the customer service around it. Project close is a terrific time to get that information formalized. We want that information all throughout the project, but the close is kind of a nice end cap. And obviously the close is an excellent time for us to make sure that we met our original goal, and also a great chance to recognize all the people on your team that were instrumental in making the project successful. So we do take project close seriously for a lot of reasons. Those are the main ones, and we consider that a best practice as well.
I got a little bit of volume. So I think we want to give our attendees an opportunity to ask questions, so we want to keep rolling here for a couple of minutes. And please, if you have any, now's the time to get Justin, a very hard resource to get a hold of. So if you have him, he's got the mic.
A couple of questions on what RICE stands for. If you could flip back to that slide, is there?
Yeah, RICE is any custom reports, any interfaces, any customizations, or extensions. And an extension might be a Design Studio modification or an IPA flow, pretty much anything that's non-standard out of the box that you would need to test for.
One of the things that, if I can add on to that I hear is, are there a lot of changes in how people interface when they go to the cloud, or does that mostly stay the same? Is it all like for like, or do people replace their interface tools?
It depends, obviously, on a lot of things, including what they're using. I mean, if you're healthcare and you're using a Clinical Bridge or any of the Cloverleaf products, that is part of the Cloud Suite bundle, so that would be like for like. If you're using, we've seen literally, Unix scripting to facilitate interfaces, and obviously that would need to be completely revamped and redeveloped. We usually normally would recommend doing that in IPA, which is kind of the extensibility tool of choice, which would allow for that type of remediation. Move it scripts. I mean, there's a lot of things that fall under the banner of integration, but normally what we've seen is a desire driven by timeline to do like for like whenever possible. But there are some times when that's simply not an option, and you need to plan for that as well. Sometimes
people use 4GL programs to customize standard outputs and do interfaces. Then that tends to get potentially migrated as well, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other question I get, sort of along the same lines a lot, is I'm gonna try to phrase it like I often get it, is will I have access to the database? I think a lot of people have direct sort of querying tools maybe and so forth, and there's some concerns about losing that ability.
Yeah, that's a good point to talk about. The short answer is yes, you have it, and the other answer is make sure you test for it, because the way that you ping your database directly through an ODBC connection today may or may not have the same impact on your memory and your server performance in the cloud. So that would definitely be something, especially if you have a high volume of custom ODBC or OLADB or any custom reporting that's hitting the database and using memory, is definitely something that would need to be part of that performance test plan. So the short answer is yes, it's easy. It's allowed in a single tenant world, not so much in a multi-tenant world. They're not going to let you do a stored procedure on the SQL database in a multi-tenant situation, but that's years out. It's allowed. It's something you should definitely use common sense and test for.
So the RICE has the specific thing that it stands for, but it really means everything you do with the system like that if you're using it for a querying tool. I know you talked about customizations a little bit, and so there's always the question of, are customizations allowed in the cloud? And the answer is obviously yes, but I think you touch a little bit is like, you have to sort of make the business case that this is something that I'm not able to do in every other way, and I think you have to budget time for that too, right? Like, like it's not like you could say, here's your inventory, here's 80 they're going to migrate, and here's 20 they're going to go. That's a conversation that occurs with Infor, and there's some processes around it, and that has to be baked into your timeline if that's going to be a part of your.
Yes, That's a very slippery slope because there's a lot of factors that affect that conversation, including timeline expectations. I mean, a lot of times we'll start a project and learn that there are, a high volume of customizations that, we budgeted an estimate for, but we might need to adjust that estimate and potentially adjust the timeline. And then, to go through the approval process and wait for that to complete before you start the development, can cause an impact. Your overall point of, is what I tried to address in the fit gap analysis. That's the opportunity to look at why do these customizations truly exist, and that's really part of our partnership with our clients and with Infor is to help you, help the customer get the most out of what they've already bought. And we see that time and again on a list of 200 customizations. When we get under the covers in that fit gap, we might learn that 50 of them haven't been used in 2 years, and we can just simply retire them and take them off the list. And then we turn our attention to the 150 that remain and figure out, okay, look, we noticed that you're doing these things because that's how you've always done it, and this is a perfect opportunity to do that, better using a new extensibility tool like IPA or simply just a different process. A lot of times you implemented Lawson 10 years ago based on your business requirements then that may or may not be applicable today and tomorrow. So it's definitely something that you should plan for that conversation, and it's a conversation that our consultants are definitely good at facilitating.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a challenge up front. Maybe you implemented 20 years ago, and some customizations were developed 5 years after that, and all those people are gone. And so you'd be surprised how many times, once we start a project, when we start looking under the hood, there's stuff that nobody really remembered or allegedly remembered was in there when we were walking through what that timeline might look like. You got some more there?
Not really, but just a lot of positive feedback and appreciation for you sharing your time with this audience. So thank you, Justin.
Oh, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Mr. Braun, for this great presentation. We hope to see you guys again middle of September. Got a few more presentations lined up there. If you go to rpic.com and check out the webinars page, you can see everything that we have scheduled.